welcome back, Weirds and Weeboos, to the channel Bitch and Doge, where today we're covering the new hero, Anran, who is in the current playtest. And if you haven't already seen, here's her hero select. So, anyway, big news for Overwatch, you probably already know, but some of you don't, so I'm going to have to quickly catch you up. But if you want the details, you're going to have to watch the actual Overwatch Spotlight, because I'm not going to cover everything that was in it. Long story short, the big cliff notes, though, is that we are getting 5 new heroes at the start of next season, which is only a few days away. That is the most heroes that have ever dropped at once in Overwatch's over 10-year-long history. That is insane. So, yeah, pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. Something we're pretty happy about. Now, unfortunately, I will say, out of those 5 heroes, only one of them are getting a playtest, obviously Anran, and I will say, out of these 5 heroes, Anran was the one I was the most thoroughly disinterested in. So I am a little bit disappointed out of all 5 of them, they picked Anran to be the one to get a playtest, when it was basically the only one I did not care about. But, you know, fine. I can't complain too much. We're getting 5 new heroes in a few days. I can't moan. Either way. Now, I say I wasn't super interested in Anran. I'm not here to tell you that she's a terrible character. It's just, she's bland, in my opinion. Now, she's not badly designed. She really isn't. But, like, it's just, I feel like she's already so close in playstyle to a lot of already existing characters, to the point where I almost kind of think to myself, okay, so why do you play Anran? Like, right now we play Anran because she's the new character, but, like, after we have the new character craze, why would you play Anran? And right now, I could think of a few weak answers, but I don't really have any strong affirmative, this is why you play Anran. This is what Anran brings to the team. Either way, very quick rundown of her abilities before we go over them more thoroughly. We got left click, we got right click, we got a dash with 2 charges, and we got this, as well as her ultimate. And there you go. So that's the quick rundown. Now let's actually go over this in detail. So, for a left click, she fires 2 projectiles that do 40 damage each that can headshot, and if you land 4 body shots, or 2 headshots, it will set someone on fire. It is kind of like Malga, where your right click will always headshot someone who is on fire, and in fact can only headshot someone who is on fire. So if I set this guy on fire, crit, but if I do this, nothing. Even if I hit, well actually that was bad, just a second, even if I hit the head, nothing. They have to be on fire, and then it's a headshot. So yeah, so those are your left click and right click. The left click, one of the best advantages of it is that while it is a projectile with travel time, it also has absolutely 0 damage fall off and 0 range limit. So I can do maximum damage even from this far back. It's just going to be inconsistent getting that damage from so far away because it's got such a long travel time. But if you can predict people hard enough that you can hit them from this distance away, you can actually have some pretty good range on this character. So yeah. Anyway, oh yeah, another thing to note, easy to forget, I nearly missed it. Tanks do take longer to set on fire. So basically, if you think of it like a body shot is worth 1 pip and a headshot is worth 2 pips, and it takes 4 to set a normal character on fire, a tank takes 6. So it's going to take 6 body shots or 3 headshots to set a tank on fire. Like that. So yeah, anyway. As well as that, the fire itself lasts 3 seconds and does 10 damage per second, so it's plus 30 damage over a long period of time. However, Fan the Flames, the way it works is kind of weird. Essentially, that when you use Fan the Flames on someone, not only does it crit, and not only does it refresh the flame timer, but when it refreshes the flame timer, it also buffs the DOT to deal double damage. So instead of dealing 10 damage per second, it becomes 20 per second, at least for the remaining duration of the ignition. So, yeah. To be honest, one of the strangest parts about this character is while generally the loop of just, like, set someone on fire, right-click, does work, I'm in a position where I genuinely haven't labbed this enough to know, it might actually be less efficient to do that. It's definitely easier, because right-click is way easier to land and way more consistent, but if you're being, like, a giga sweat, it might be true that, like, headshot and then, like, alternating like this is still the way to go, even if they're already on fire. Because of the fact that when you actually look at the statistics, right-click's damage is actually terrible. It's only 48 damage, and that's if you're critting it. If you're not critting it, it's only 24, and that's for the whole volley. It also needs to reload more frequently. So, honestly, you might be like, oh, wait, that sounds terrible. I mean, this is 40 damage per volley that can headshot for 80. You look at the left click, and yeah, it's only 20 damage per hit, but it can headshot for double damage. That can make it 80, whereas this is only 48. This is literally like nearly double the damage of what this is. So in terms of pure damage output, your left click is actually better than your right click, even when they're on fire. It's just that the right click is way more consistent because it's got a way bigger hitbox, and of course, it is also a beam attack, so it can be going through things like defense matrix and such. So yeah, definitely you have this weird thing where like left clicks are actually still kind of better depending on how consistently you can hit your target, even when they're on fire. But I'm not going to complain too much about that, considering that, yeah, in realistic situations, those right clicks are still probably going to be more valuable, just because once someone's on fire, they start scrambling all over the place, and especially if they're a small hitbox, even if you're good at the game, you're probably not consistently hitting those dinks. And if you're not consistently hitting left click dinks on the target once they're on fire, then yeah, the consistency of just hitting every right click is going to be way better. But anyway, so those are the left click and right click. Then there's the dash. So this dash feels weird. So one of the first things that stood out to me about this dash is that most dash abilities in Overwatch use the key that you are pressing on your keyboard to determine which direction you need to dash rather than the direction you're facing. However, this dash doesn't work that way. Literally my first game on Anran, I actually started off doing pretty well to say I'd never played her before, and then I fed my brains out because I tried to dash backwards while I was in the middle of the enemy team while facing forwards. But even though I'm holding backwards on my keyboard, I press dash and I dash forwards and die. And it obviously looked very stupid, but obviously that only happened because I didn't realise it was going to work that way. At first I thought this was probably an oversight because of the fact that this is just an early playtest and this would be fixed when the actual character comes out. But I actually don't think that's the case, because there was something else about this character I didn't understand. In the playtest I was seeing a lot of people who were using her dash to go up, and I was completely confused by that because, as far as I could tell, you couldn't actually go up with it. You don't get jump height off of it, you don't you don't really get to float or anything. I didn't understand it. In fact, at one point I thought it was like you look up and you start floating, but no, it's not that. I mean, you can do a sort of thing kind of like a punch bounce with Doomfist with it. I did find that, but it wasn't just that I was seeing. I don't know if I can do it right now because it's not an easy ledge to do it off of here. I could try doing it off this barrel. Yeah, no, I'm going to struggle with all these tiny little bits. But yeah, you can kind of punch bounce. Got a little bit of height off of that. You can get extra height off things by bouncing off of them when you launch into them. But it turns out the real way you're supposed to do it is really simple. You just look in the direction. I know it probably sounds stupid right now, but it genuinely took me ages to figure this out. I was playing so many games with Anran thinking you couldn't access high ground, and I'm like, wait, how the hell are these other Anrans getting to high ground? What the fuck? How? So yeah, it turns out, yeah, you always dash the way you're looking, even if the way you're looking is up or down. So, yeah, interesting. A little bit sad that you can't use your movement keys, because that is going to mess with my head and my muscle memory, because every other the character with a dash-like ability in the game uses their movement keys as the direction they're going. But at the very least, it's nice that you can use this for verticality and make plays. Another thing to note as well is that this dash can, even though it's not really designed to be a damage-dealing move, can deal damage, and it can set people on fire. It gets them halfway there, so yep, now they're on fire. So yeah, that's about it. You have to run into them to do it, and you can hit the same target twice with one dash, but realistically you're probably not going to in a real game. Oh, okay, you're right, yeah, no, even that didn't even do it. Wait, am I messing it up? Maybe you can't. Oh, can you not? I saw people doing that before, but maybe it was just the people at the event were playing a different version, like a different build. Well, anyway. So that was Inferno Rush. Looking at Dancing Blaze now, you do this. And essentially, it deals 50 damage to everyone it hits. It hits everyone standing near you when you activate it. And the main reason it's so good is because it gives you complete intangibility and invincibility while it's active. This is sort of like a self-Suzu, just without the heal. But it does cleanse, it does make things go through you, it does mean you cannot be hurt while it's active. It's on a 10-second cooldown, which honestly, considering it's an invincibility ability, is actually relatively short. Like again, 10 is a relatively long cooldown by Overwatch standards for normal abilities, but for invincibility things, that's actually relatively frequent. And it even has an interesting little quirk where the more people you hit with it, the longer the invincibility frames last. Because, of course, the animation becomes longer. So, yeah, this is the main ability in a kit I actually really like, because of the fact that it seems so small, but there's so many situations where you can just use this unexpectedly. Sometimes I'll use this on literally no one. Sometimes it'll just be that, like, I really want to walk up on someone, but I know the sight line is too long, but, like, someone's got to walk on them. They're, like, too oppressive to ignore. And so I'll just be like, okay, I'm going to walk up, I'm going to, like, make myself look like a really easy shot, and I'm literally just going to, like, this in place when they go for the shot, and then immediately dash up once they've already like blown their cooldowns to try and kill me from a distance and get in their face. And usually because I used it early in the fight goes on long enough that I get it back again before I'm done fighting them, so I can then use it again to finish them off right at the end of the battle. So yeah, like, you can get creative with how you use that ability, and I really, really appreciate that. The only thing is, as you can see, it's almost entirely impossible to move during it. You can nudge yourself just a teeny bit, but that's about it. It also does cancel any momentum you got going, which might have a few niche uses, but for the most part is a bit of a disappointment. It would be cool if you could like leap upwards out of it, if you like had upwards momentum when you started it, but yeah, whatever. Either way, Anran, one of her only super unique gimmicks, really, is that her ultimate is a 2-in-1 ultimate, something we haven't seen in a while. The last time we saw a concept like that was years ago when Symmetra used to have 2 ultimates. For those of you who didn't know, Symmetra in the past, her teleporter was her ultimate. It would, instead of the teleporters having to be a certain distance together, they could be an infinite distance apart and didn't need line of sight. And the first teleporter would always spawn at the spawn room, and the second teleporter would just take you straight back into the point, usually, wherever you decided to build it. Well, they also gave her a second ultimate back in the past, where she could switch that to a shield generator, which gave people more shields on their health bar if they stood close enough to it, until it was broken. Of course, that doesn't exist anymore, but ever since I've always thought, man, we're really missing out on the opportunity for another 2-in-1 ultimate character. And we have that here, although it's implemented a little differently. There's no select the ultimate. I mean, right now if I use it, I'm just always going to use the same ultimate, which is this. It's fine, but it's nothing that's going to blow you away. But to be fair, that's kind of par for the course for DPS ultimates. It does a maximum of 165 damage, it sets people on fire, you can see the radius, and yeah, just a bunch of information here. So, important thing to note about this is, to be fair, I say this is kind of meh. It's better than it looks, to be fair. I think this ultimate is actually pretty good for a DPS, because of the fact that while this is like never going to kill on its own, it does enough damage to put people low, it does set people on fire, and crucially, one thing that's really easy to overlook but is super important about this ultimate, genuinely I think it's the main thing that makes it so good, is that it actually has the reverse knockback you would expect. You would expect that it would knock people away, but it actually knocks people in towards the center, which makes it so much easier to follow up with just a couple right clicks afterwards and get a guaranteed kill. Like if I use this on Roadhog here... Oh yeah, he's a tank, so he's going to take reduced knockback, but you can see it actually pulled him closer to the center, which is really, really, really good. Let me see if I can pick a character that might take a bit more... Where's the battery? There it is. That might not seem like a lot, but genuinely, the amount of times that someone who's about to escape dies because I can pull them in with that is surprisingly high. So yeah, the ultimate's actually pretty good, even though it doesn't do enough damage to kill, even with a perfect usage. It is pretty hard to dodge, and it pulls people inwards so that you can get the follow-up. That being said, I said it's a 2-in-1. That is because, if you happen to die while you have your ultimate, it does something different if you attempt to use it while you're dead. 5, 4, 3, 2, let's use it now. You can use it at any time during that countdown. The reason why I used it a little bit early there before I ran out of time is because I have already attempted to record this once, and I did find out the practice range has faster respawn times, so it actually cancels the ultimate and like puts you back in the spawn room, but while there's still like over a second left on the clock, so I do have to use it a little bit early before the time runs out. But in a normal match, yeah, you get those 5 seconds to choose whether you want to ult or not and come back to life. Now, I know that the Phoenix Resurrection, thank you lag, I know that the whole Phoenix Resurrection thing might seem like the cooler part of this ultimate, but I'm also going to tell you, to be honest, Vermilion Revival, the res version of the ultimate, is nowhere near good as Vermilion Ascent, if you ask me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to complain about that fact necessarily, because I think it's fine for you to have it that this ultimate is the one you're quote-unquote supposed to use, and Vermilion Revival is just there as like a, oh, you can use this if you find a situation to use it. I think it's fine to have it so that like you use one more than the other most often, but you have the option to use the other one if the situation arises. That's fine to me, but I will say, just so people know, don't try to use Vermilion Revival is the best way I could put it. Don't force it. Like, if you find yourself in a situation where if you resurrected right now it would be bad enough for the enemy team that it feels worth, go for it. But like, don't think, oh, I need to die and then use my ultimate to res because I want to use the res version. Genuinely, just using the ult for damage, the normal Vermilion Ascent version, is way better, because the res version does way less damage. This does a maximum of up to 165. This does a maximum of 65, and that's a best case scenario. That is if they stand in the AoE for the full duration and then stand in the very center of the explosion because they're just AFK. Best case scenario is 65 damage, which is still not a lot. Not to mention, this also knocks people away rather than towards you, so you're very likely to miss the follow-up if you do use Vermilion Revival, unless you have the mobility to chase. So yes, as a result, the normal ult is way better than a resurrection ult, but that doesn't mean the resurrection ult is badly designed or anything. It just means that it's something where you sit when you die and you wait and you see, am I in a position that's good enough now that if I res it's more valuable than my normal ultimate? And obviously I think it's fine that most of the time the answer is no, but there are going to be times when the answer is yes, and obviously you're going to be like, okay, cool, right, the enemies aren't looking, they are kind of standing on my body, so I'm going to burn them all when I come back. Let's rip it, you know. Oh, another thing as well, I very much have to appreciate for a second, I will admit, I'm very glad they did this. When you are playing against an Anran and they die and they have their ultimate, they will leave a flame where they died that indicates, hey, don't stand here, because if you do, I might use my ultimate and set you on fire. Which is good, because it would be annoying if you just had to remember the exact position the Anran died, and I could definitely see some people, like, someone dies and their ragdoll goes flying, so you have no idea where they died, and then you just have no idea you're standing on the spot where they died, and they just ult and you die. That would suck. That's really good that they thought about that and made sure to clearly indicate where she's going to resurrect. I'm glad they did that. That brings us on to her perk selection, which, I think most of these are pretty good. This is a weird situation where I'm actually not too opinionated yet. Well, I suppose that shouldn't be so weird because, like, these are, like, this is early days. But in fairness, usually I pretty quickly develop a pretty strong opinion about perks. With Wu Yang, I was immediately quite opinionated on balance being the far superior perk, and I'm glad that I was right about that. I can't believe how much people tried to tell me, oh no, trust me, the reload perk is good, the reload perk is good, it also gives a heal boost. Nah, balance was broken as hell. It's insane people thought that balance wasn't the better perk. Anyway, but here I'm actually a little bit more torn. I have formed an opinion on the minor perk selection, but the major perk I'm a bit more neutral. So, the minor perk selection, my initial impression before playing Anran was that Smolder was going to be the better choice. However, I'm leaning now more towards Heat Shield. Oh, actually, I always fall into this trap. For the sake of making this video easier to do, I'm just actually going to cover the left side perks for both major and minor first, so we'll get back to Heat Shield later. So, Smolder makes it so that when you set someone on fire, the fire lasts a second and a half longer. Which, as a friendly reminder, the base time was 3 seconds, so that's from 3 seconds to 4.5 seconds, which means we go from dealing 30 damage to 45 damage from setting people on fire. So it's 15 extra damage for every person you set on fire, and it's also more time to follow up with right clicks. So, considering that's 15 free extra damage just constantly, as well as more time to close out kills, you might be thinking, okay, so that's obviously the better perk, and that's what I thought too. However, I will say, having actually played Anran now, I'm a little disappointed with it. So first of all, in fairness, part of this may just be the kind of characters people just so happen to be playing during the playtest. There has been an absurd amount of cleanse. I swear every support on the planet is picking Kiriko, they're picking Lifeweaver with cleanse on Life Grip, they're picking like Moira so she can fade and cleanse herself. The amount of times I dive backline, set them on fire, they get cleansed, set them on fire again, they get cleansed, set them on fire again, they get cleansed. I never get any value off of having the longer burn time because the fire just gets put out every 2 seconds. So I didn't find that super valuable. As well as that, I also found that usually your window of opportunity to close out a kill with Anran was usually very short, which shouldn't be too surprising, but it was so short that the extra 1.5 seconds of people being set on fire for longer very rarely actually helped much, because if I left someone for that long without killing them anyway, they would almost certainly just heal back up to full. As well as that, a friendly reminder that if I hit someone who's already on fire, that resets the timer. So it's not necessarily like, oh, but like, you know, it gives you more time to wail on them. No, if I keep hitting them, there's basically no difference whether the fire lasts longer or shorter, as long as I can keep hitting them. The fire lasting longer is only really good if the person I'm attacking is someone who I cannot, like, easily deal damage to. You know, like, I cannot easily keep the pressure upon, and I need longer amounts of time of, like, grace periods, where if they don't get hit for this long, it's still going to be on fire, and I can still reset the timer. But in practice, I find that that's not usually what you want. So I will say that doesn't mean the perk is bad. You're still getting lots of free little extra bits of damage, and you're still also getting free ult charge off of that. But I am leaning towards the idea it might not be as good as I thought it was at first. I will also say, though, as I say, part of that might just come down to the fact that it seems like every support is counter-picking Anran right now, and just picking supports that, like, you can't set them on fire ever. So, like, it might come down to that, and it might turn out when you play Anran in more normal matches, it might be more useful, but from what I've experienced so far, I'm starting to think maybe I overrated it a little bit. Now, as for the mages, let's start with the one on the left again, Short Fuse. Impacting an enemy with Inferno Rush, which is your dash, will reduce the cooldown of Inferno Rush by 1.5 seconds. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'll confess, I fell into a bit of a trap with Anran that I don't usually do. Because I was too busy trying to learn how to play her, I kind of forgot that I was barely ever picking this perk. And not even because I thought it was bad, I just kind of got comfortable using the other perk, and then started brainlessly picking it every time without even really considering whether it was the better perk or not. Which, usually, I'm pretty good for not falling for that trap, but I don't know, I guess just was thinking too much about all the other new stuff with this character that I kind of forgot, oh yeah, there's another perk I should probably play with. So I've not played a lot with this perk. However, funnily enough, now I have played with it even just a little bit, I'm thinking it might be the better one in most cases. But even then, I'm not too opinionated on this decision, because they're both pretty good. Essentially, in fairness, their dash does actually have quite a long cooldown. It is remedied a bit by the fact that it is, you know, 2 charges, but 8.5 seconds for a mobility cooldown on a flanker is actually pretty bad. Like, 8.5 seconds is pretty average when you, like, talk about just all abilities, but if you're talking about, like, a Tracer, Blink is what? 3 seconds, you know. When you look at Sombra, Translocator, in fairness, Translocator is, relatively longer, but it's still only 6 seconds. If we look at Genji, that's the only character where I really get anywhere near that long with 8-second dash, but even then, you do have Swift Cuts, which can reduce the cooldown of it by 3 seconds, pretty consistently making it a 5-second dash in practice. So, yeah, Anran definitely has some relatively slow recharging mobility, even if she gets to kind of stock it up and then, like, you know, use it in a burst. So as a result, being able to get it back faster and such a significant amount faster for landing hits is pretty nice. Although I will also say it's quite awkward to hit people with the dash in practice in a real game, as you might be able to imagine. It does make you very vulnerable, and it doesn't do a lot of damage, even if it is a bit of free damage. So, yeah, definitely a little bit of a weird one. Either way, if we go back to the right side perk options, we can take a look at the right side minor, Heat Shield. So I wasn't super convinced Heat Shield was going to be good, and that was further reinforced when it actually has already been buffed. The build that people were playing at the event, it was 50 over health per tick. Now it's 60. So what it does is you get 60 over health for every enemy you set on fire by using your ultimate, regardless of, like, which one you use, either ultimate, up to a maximum of 180. It used to be 50 up to a maximum of 150. But yes, considering it already needed to be buffed before it even was put into the playtest, before it even releases, and considering this is another ultimate perk, and ultimate perks don't get very, well, obviously they don't have a lot of uptime because you only spend so long in the game using your ultimate, I was pretty prepared to call this perk trash. But now I've actually used it, I think it might be the better perk, actually, which surprised me. The main reason why, I would say, is because this gets a little bit more into my broader complaints with Anran. I'm not saying this is, like, awful design or anything. It certainly could be much worse. But I do feel like Anran feels like she struggles to fully commit to being a flanker. it feels like she's more of an all-rounder, that, like, yeah, nominally she's supposed to be a flanker, but just every other flanker in the game is better at being a flanker. So, like, Anran can flank, but it's more like you do a bit of everything. You can poke, you can brawl a bit, and then, yeah, you flank when you can, but, like, you don't really have the same pace of gameplay that a Tracer does, or a Genji, or a Sombra. Or even a Venture, honestly. So, yeah. As a result, I do find there are a lot of situations with Anran where you just spend half the game getting ready to pounce, and getting ready to pounce, and getting ready to pounce, and poking and moving around and like, hey, I'm gonna pounce, hey, I'm gonna pounce, and it's just like, I mean, okay, I actually can't do it right now. There's way too many people looking at me. I still am, at least I'm taking a lot of attention and resources, but I can't do anything yet. 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 Okay, I can spook him a little bit. No, can't commit. Okay, can't do anything yet. Can't do it. Okay, now I can do something. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I think that's why I found the ult perk better than I expected. Is because I do find on Anran, it's very rare that you can make something big happen without having to just either wait for the perfect moment or use your ultimate. And a lot of the times, the way you create your perfect moment is by using your ultimate. So I would say that Anran, like, really needs to be getting all the value she can in those small windows she gets. Usually, I'm a big fan of just consistency and just picking perks that just give you value throughout the entire game rather than just one window. But I feel like Anran struggles to get much more value other than, like, distraction, space making, like, sort of sapping resources, but not really getting kills kind of value. I feel like he really struggles to just get pure kills in the neutral, and it's only when she gets those moments where it's like, okay, now I can go in, that she snowballs really hard. So the ability to make sure your snowball doesn't get interrupted by just popping ult and just, boom, I've got all this other health, I can go crazy and I don't have to worry about getting mown over. Really, really, really good. The other major perk is the one that has grown on me more, but I'm actually not sure if it is stronger or not. It's just kind of, I feel like the way I play Anran, it gels with me more, but it might not be better in the long run, is Hungering Blaze. That makes it so that whenever you use your invincibility ability, you heal 50 HP for every enemy you hit with it, which makes you a lot tankier and a lot more able to take longer, drawn-out fights with people. Genuinely, it has been super clutch. Like, I'm actually so torn. Like, it's very rare that I'm this torn on a perk decision. I know it's early days, but both of these major perks are really good. Like, I know 50 might not sound like a lot of health, but, like, you see, an important thing to know about Overwatch is that the reason why sometimes a tiny amount of health is a massive difference maker and sometimes it isn't, is because it depends on what the character does. If the character's brawling on the front line, like they're a Orisa or a Mauga, then sure, 50 health is nothing. But if the character is flanking the backline and often going for, like, vulnerable supports, but they're also very vulnerable themselves, then the slightest stat changes make the biggest difference, because of the kind of people that tend to be fighting. Amalga's probably going to be fighting an Orisa or whatever. Both of them have an absolute ton of health. Both of them do a ton of damage. Having a little bit of extra health won't make a big difference to either of them. But to a 225 HP Juno that's being chased down by a 250 HP Anran, a 50 health difference is like a massive change to, like, who might win that fight, who comes out on top, ultimately. So, yeah. I do think both these perks are really, really nice. That being said, Anran as a whole, let me just talk broadly about how I feel about her. So I'm going to make the argument, and don't think this is going to be too much of a hot take. I've seen most people saying Anran is Genji 2.0, which is pretty understandable. I would say that Genji's probably the closest analog here, but I feel like she's between Genji and Sombra. Now, if you are not a Sombra player, you might be like, why the hell is she like Sombra? Well, okay, I need to not turn this into a Sombra rant, but just so you know, hack is not, like, nearly your most important ability as Sombra. The main thing that's supposed to be, like, good Sombras are supposed to do. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of bad Sombras that do just play annoying Sombra, where they just wait to hack people and annoy them. But that's not actually a good way to play Sombra. That's the dumb way to play Sombra. The good way to play Sombra is that you try and be as aggressive as possible. You're basically playing like a sort of more well-rounded Tracer. That you're using your invisibility and your movement speed to constantly get into the backline, constantly poke at people, go for the targets that are in the most vulnerable positions and all that, and constantly keep up the aggro. So you're basically kind of playing, you know, as I say, like this really, really aggressive flanker, where the hack is just there as like a little, like a little bonus to make you more well-rounded. As I say, that's why she's like a more well-rounded Tracer. She's like a Tracer that doesn't have quite as crazy mobility, but still can kind of position herself similarly, and can still do quite a bit of damage, even if not quite as much. but like the reason why she doesn't get to be as good at Tracer with most of these things is because she also has the utility of having hack. She also has the utility of having more effective range. Even if she's still not supposed to be used at like long range, she's better at long range than Tracer is and all that. You know, that's why I say Sombra's a good comparison point. Because when I look at Anran, it's like, okay, this kind of a bit of a similar mobility to Translocator, honestly. Obviously, it's also similar to Genji Dash, but I'm actually going to say Translocator, to me, feels like the more close comparison. And, of course, it's got a slightly longer cooldown, but generally similar feel to Translocator. And just like Sombra, we have a character that is supposed to attack backline, but also has more of an ability to poke from a distance, so that they're not quite so useless when they're not able to commit. Also, they have the sort of extra utility of the invincibility frames from this. So yeah, they are a little bit Sombra / Genji-like. Now, with that out of the way, that's why we're comparing the two. Is that a problem or is that a good thing? It's a good thing in that these are well-designed characters, and yes, I'm including Sombra in that list. Yes, I know people are going to be mad at me for that, but again, hack is literally not even that good of an ability. It only gets you if you're stupid. I know people are going to be tilted about that, but it's just true. I mean, it depends on the character. Obviously, there are some characters that get screwed by hack, but only a small handful, really. Anyway, it's good because these characters are well-designed, fun, high skill requirement characters, and so the fact that Anran is taking cues from them is obviously a good thing because they are good characters. Copying those attributes is good for Anran. However, they copy them so much that I do look at Anran and it's like, okay, when do you play Anran? Serious question. What does Anran do better than Genji does? Because I genuinely don't think I have an answer to that. Well, not a good one, at least. I have a few weak answers. I think that Anran's ultimate might be easier to get value out of. That doesn't necessarily mean it's better. I think that Dragon Blade, especially when you Nano Blade combo, has way higher highs. Dragon Blade can do way more. But I do also think on average, if you're just talking about you want consistency with your ultimates, you want your ultimates to consistently do something, I think Anran probably has the more consistent ultimate compared to Genji. Anran probably is a little bit better at poking than Genji, even though they both have a similar poke game where they have no damage fall off or like limited range, but they do have long travel time. I guess as I say, I guess you can poke a little bit better than Genji. I guess technically her mobility is a little better, or again, maybe the word is consistency, because obviously dash is better if you're getting dash resets constantly, but obviously having 2 dashes is probably going to be better on average than having a dash reset sometimes. So I guess there's that. But you can see a lot of the stuff, like, if we want to look at what makes Anran different to Genji, it's very fiddly. It's very, well, I guess this is slightly different, it's slightly better for this context, but, you know, I feel like one thing that really bothers me is, like, don't get me wrong, my mechanics on Genji aren't the best, but if you look at a character like Genji, when he gets into the range he wants to get into, it's like, it's a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage. Like, you know, the amount of damage that Genji can do at point-blank range is terrifying. But then there's Anran, and I'm not saying Anran's up-close damage is bad, but I just mean, compare the time to kill. It's not slow, but, like, Genji's kind of got her beat. And considering that Genji is also the character that already has more of an established player base, I don't know. A lot of people are saying she's just better Genji, but I genuinely think it's kind of the other way around. I think Genji is just better Anran. I kind of look at Genji and it's like, you can kill faster, your quote-unquote invincibility ability lasts longer. Even if I think Anran's is design-wise cooler and more fun, I also just think if we're talking pure strength, Deflect is probably the stronger ability here. The only thing where she really might have an edge is in consistency, but already you're playing a very Feast or Famine character if you're playing a Genji-like character in the first place. So generally, like, I don't see that as too much of a downside. I look at Anran and I'm like, what does she do that we haven't seen before? I guess there's the 2 ultimates thing, but like I say, I don't even think the Resurrection is all that good. So I just feel like I wouldn't play Anran. Well, I mean, I would just because I want to play everyone in this game. But, like, I would only play Anran because she's the new character or because I want to play everyone. I wouldn't play Anran over Genji or Sombra or Tracer in the same sort of situations. I guess the only thing is he probably is, by a small margin, the best option out of these 4 for poking at long range. But even then, you don't want to be poking from long range if you can help it. And I do find that you often, I don't know, you struggle to get a lot of value that way. Obviously, you still can get a trickle of value that's very hard to deny, and that's good, but I don't know. I just feel like in her current state, Anran doesn't really have a place because she hasn't carved out a niche for herself. And I think that's part of the reason why I was the least excited for her out of the 5 new characters, is because I didn't really see her doing something new. Like, the archetype of character she is an archetype of character I love. I love Sombra, Tracer, and Genji. They are some of my favourite characters in the game. Definitely some of my favourite characters in the DPS role. In fact, Sombra and Tracer are my most played DPS. But even just the other DPS, Emre, who's also a pretty standard character, if you haven't seen him already, he's kind of like a Soldier 76-like character. He's got a 3-shot burst rifle, he can ADS, he doesn't have a movement speed penalty while looking down his sights, so he can run at maximum speed while shooting accurately. He throws bouncing grenades, and he can transform his weapon into like an explosive pistol thing that gives him jump height and move speed and lifesteal temporarily. So yeah, he's a pretty typical run and gun standard character, so you might think that he seems more boring than Anran, but even then, he's almost so much a standard FPS character in a game like Overwatch, which doesn't have very many standard FPS characters, that almost is what makes him unique. I actually feel like Emre will be more of a game changer than Anran is, even though in concept he's a lot more basic, just because what Emre does is something we see so little of in Overwatch, and before, the only character even like him we've had before is Soldier, who obviously Soldier's already a bit of an oddball himself. I see Emre filling in a niche, whereas I don't really see that with Anran. Either way though, I think I'm going to call this video here. I'll see if I have any more thoughts on Anran when she fully releases. But I guess to leave it for now, for those of you who have seen the Overwatch Spotlight and do know about all 5 of the upcoming heroes, which one are you most excited for? It's actually a tough call for me. Jetpack Cat is the obvious answer, but I am worried that I'll only like Jetpack Cat for the grapple and being able to pull people around, and I'm not sure if I'll care about everything else. I do get a bit wary of flying characters. Like, that's definitely the ability I'm the most excited for, is Jetpack Cat's pull. I suppose overall, the character I might be the most excited for would probably be Domina, the new tank. Because although she has some similarities to Sigma, first of all, Sigma's already kind of an oddball tank. There's almost no one in the game that plays like him, so it's nice to have a tank that fills a similar role to him. But also, I feel like I see enough in Domina that makes me think, oh, that looks interesting and different, that I personally think Domina's going to be quite interesting to play with, even though she's not my usual kind of playstyle of tank. With all that being said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.